3, plugging right along. So we are in our last special segment lesson. Our next lesson is going to be a little bit different, actually. It's not going to be talking about special segments. So far, we talked about perpendicular bisectors, angle bisectors, and this one's going to be brand new to us, mid-segments. So what a mid-segment is, exactly what it sounds like. It connects the midpoints of two sides of a triangle. So we would call this one a mid-segment because if you notice, D is the midpoint of this side because we see we have two congruent pieces. That makes it the midpoint, right? And over here, E is the midpoint of this side because, again, we can see that we have two congruent pieces here. That means, by definition, E is the midpoint. Now, there's some special things that end up happening here with what we call the mid-segment. And once again, if I wasn't clear, that means that DE here is the mid-segment, the segment that connects the two midpoints of two sides. Again, DE is mid-segment. Is mid-segment. So there's kind of two cool things that happen with this, kind of magically, again, by the magic of math. One, this mid-segment will be parallel to the side it doesn't touch. So if you notice, we have that marked, right? These will actually be parallel, perfectly parallel no matter what. And magically also half as long. So just a real quick example here, even though we're going to go into it. If this was 10 down here, that would make DE half of that. So what would it be? 5, right? So that relationship is going to happen. So just be careful when you're doing these problems. Obviously, that should be obvious to us. That this will be smaller than the other side, right? This should be a smaller side. Don't get them jumbled up. Occasionally, I will have kids not pay attention, and they'll go, oh, well, if this is 10, this is 20. Well, you got it flip-flopped, right? It's the short one that's half of the big one, not the other way around, yeah? So, again, we technically have things being equal here in this picture. You've got some congruent pieces along the outside. But then you have this half relationship going on here. So what ends up happening here is kind of interesting, and we'll see that in our first example. Now, we're actually going to do example 3 first. Again, guys, just keep up with me. Yeah, I kind of jumbled these up. We're going to do example 3 and then 1 and 2 separately. So it says example 3, which segment is parallel to XY? Take a second, identify XY on the picture. Where is that? Here's XY. So what we just learned was the mid-segment is parallel to the side it doesn't touch. So looking through here, and we can kind of tell again, we know parallel means going the same way. Draw on your notes, and if you can name it, great, that's what we're going to do. The segment that's going to be parallel to that side. It ends up being the mid-segment, which what is it? Well, there is this mid-segment here. Now, I should specify, these are parallel, right? UT is parallel to XY. However, you can draw multiple mid-segments in a triangle. This is just one mid-segment. It happens to be parallel to this side. This is actually another mid-segment because, again, I'm still connecting the midpoints of those two sides. That would end up being parallel to YZ. Right? Parallel, parallel. So again, as we're going to see also in the next picture, now let's go back to number 1. They will draw multiple mid-segments, yeah? Sometimes all 3. We'll see that a bit more in class. So back to example 1. We want to find UW and RT. Now, a good trick for doing these questions is before you even look at what they're asking you to find, see if you can fill in all the missing pieces. So let's see what we got here. Well, I know that I have this 8. And what we just learned is that that mid-segment is half of the side it's parallel to. So again, if this is VW here, draw on your notes the side that it's parallel to, just like we did last time. What is the side this is parallel to? It is parallel to RT. Now, this means twofold things, right? Again, like we said, this is half of this. So what would that make all of RT then? If this is 8 and it's half of this big side, what's the big side? Well, double that is 16, right? 8 is half of 16. How do I want to say that? Or you could say that 8 doubled is 16, right? Now, what this actually ends up happening as well then is if this whole thing is 16 and we know it's cut in half, that's the midpoint, right? What ends up happening is I have this 8 here, but I actually also have an 8 here and an 8 here. These three end up being the same. Because again, if this is half of this side, well, there is 8 doubled. So same thing happens over here. We can kind of pick this apart. This whole thing is 12. What does that make these two segments? 6 and 6, right? Half of 12. So if I swooch over, boom, parallel to that side, let's go ahead and take a look at that. Parallel to this side is whoosh, UW. So again, thinking this through, UW is half of this entire side, which is 12. Again, what ends up happening, though, is it's going to equal 6 as well, right? The whole thing is 12, 6 and 6, 6. Yeah? The whole thing is 16, 8 and 8, 8. That pattern will follow. So we actually have all the answers here. And I want you guys to practice identifying these pieces. So write down on your notes there, what's UW and what's RT? We have the answers. I just want to make sure you can practice identifying them from your picture. UW is 6 and RT is 16. All you had to do is identify them. Let's try one more. Okay, so I want you guys to do the same thing here. We want to find JK and AB. However, what I recommend you do is the fact that this is 6 is going to allow us to find this piece, and the whole. The fact that this is 10 is going to allow us to find, the fact that this is 10 is going to allow us to find this piece, and this one. So I want you to try and label all those pieces just like we did here, because if you can get that understanding of those connections, when you're looking for just one thing, it's easier to know what to look at. So go ahead and label your picture. If this is 6, what are all these little blue pieces here? If this is 10, what are all the little red pieces? Okay, well again, what I know is that 6 is half of this entire side. Therefore, this entire side is 12, right? 6, double that 12. Again, what that means, therefore, is these pieces here are also 6, up to that point, right? That's half, yeah. Going in reverse here, I know the whole thing is 10, so what that tells me is this is 5 and this is 5, right? Those are halves of that, up to that point. And again, the magic of what happens is that makes this piece here also 5. So now we have everything pretty much filled in. It looks like everything that I can find, at least. I can't find anything else. I can't find that third side. I would need that info. So JK is 5 and AB is 12. Again, pretty simple with knowing what things are equal. As long as we know that pattern, these questions won't be too hard. We'll do a couple more in class. But again, like I said, this is going to be our last special segment lesson.